All right, bang. Today is Tuesday. It's September 12th. Welcome to the Dog Walk presented by Barstool Sports. I'm here with Chief as always, and we're also joined by White Sox Dave. Dave, you don't join in on many Tuesday episodes, but here you are today. Welcome back.
It's good to be back, Edward.
Yeah, a little shitty circumstances of a topic here today.
Yeah.
And when I say a little, I say a lot. I mean a lot, but we're just, I don't know, we're talking about doing a 9/11 thing.
Yeah.
And we did in 2021. We did
Correct.
we kind of laid out the cards of the whole Saudi 9/11 connection. And we're like, what could we do kind of this year?
Well, and we will talk about that too, because there's been updates since then. Because right around that time, there was there's a lawsuit from the families about where they've sued to get documents released from the FBI and other sources through a FOIA thing, and they were released after that episode. So there have been updates on like who knew what with the Saudi royal family and or Saudi intelligence, we'll say. Mm-hmm. And we can get into that a little bit too.
So we'll get into all that. I do want to say that support for today's episode comes from Marine Layer. It's official. We found the softest T-shirt mankind has ever made. Imagine the softest thing you've ever touched. Maybe kittens or freshly fallen snow. Now times that by 1,000. How many times have you felt that you were in between sizes when buying clothes?
Dude, can I say something?
Yeah, I had to stop after that line because I felt like we're all there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And everyone's there.
Look, people have been making clothes since Adam and Eve. I don't know how they invented a new fabric that was softer, or how do you get it's cotton? How do they make that? How do they make it that much softer than everybody else?
Smarter
but they
people than us.
did.
Yeah. I don't know, but what's cool about Marine Layer is they have an in-between size. You finally no longer have to make that difficult choice between medium and large and extra large. They're trying to make Marge a thing. I like that. I do like that.
That's like where I'm at. I'm a Marge.
All right, Marge. Sounds like you need some Marine Layer, Dave. So whether you're going on a date at the office, keeping it casual, watching sports, Marine Layer has the best shirts for any occasion. And they also have the Respun program. Everyone has a bunch of old tees collecting dust in the back of their closets. Marine Layer will send you a prepaid recycling kit and literally give you $5 credit per shirt. You heard that right. You actually get paid for your old tees, all while helping Marine Layer keep tees out of the landfills. Out with old shirts and in with the new. A lot of good stuff here from Marine Layer.
All right,
I'll
so
be honest.
that you broke some news to me about the T-shirt thing. I'm signing up for that because I did a closet purge at the beginning of the summer, and I was looking at my closet when I got home yesterday. I gave away bags and bags and bags of stuff, and I feel like I got more stuff than ever somehow. So I'm going to do this again before the fall, and I will be doing this through Marine Layer. That's a great incentive, and it solves a problem for me. Mm-hmm. They're going to take all the guesswork out of it. I will participate in that program.
100%. So I think we all could admit the perfect tee can be hard to find. Look no further than Marine Layer. For a limited time, get 15% off with code Chicago15 at marinelayer.com. That's Chicago15 for 15% off for your entire order at marinelayer.com. Saving your closet one shirt at a time.
Great pants too.
Yeah, go try it out. All right, so I don't know where we necessarily want to start this. I know you did say that there are updates on that whole podcast we did 2 years ago. We could start there if you want. That might be natural, unless if you have...
No, I kind of... Because I'm so much older than you. Is what, you're 30?
I'm 32.
You're 32.
Yeah.
Because I was in high school when that happened. So like I remember it like so
What
vivid.
year were you?
I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah.
I was 7th grade.
5th grade.
Okay. So what did they do for 5th graders for that?
So I still remember I was taking the Terra Nova test. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you like...
I don't remember.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a... not a placement exam, but like a benchmark of like where
okay, like a state.
Yes.
Yeah, state,
okay.
right, state
Okay.
sponsored.
Like where your school stood or whatever, So I was taking the Terra Nova test, and they made an announcement. They're like, oh, like, and they said what happened, but they're like, oh, like, don't worry, just keep taking your test.
Okay.
So I didn't like, and then the day went on as if nothing happened. We never had a TV. They never showed us anything. There was none of that. That was not my experience at all. So I didn't really know what was going on whatsoever. The only thing I remember is that like the teachers looked a little like wide-eyed when you saw them, like we changed one class in 5th grade, and I remember changing that one class or like going to lunch and seeing like that's when they were like wide-eyed. But that I truly didn't even know what was going on.
But then you just had like you're like, oh, it's time to take like fucking regular math.
Yeah, there
After the
was
class?
that. We had football practice. I remember my friend called the coach
Okay.
and was like, "Hey, is practice canceled?" And his son answered. He's like, "Well, why would it be canceled?" And my friend was like, "Well,
Yeah.
9/11." He's like, "Well, what's that got to do with it?" And then we went to practice, and that was it. There was not a big thing at all for like my day per se.
Yeah. And I wonder if that was like, hey, these kids are too young for this kind of thing.
Yeah, I still remember the practice though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still remember.
People talk.
I remember our first practice back.
Yeah.
Because I want to say it was. Part of me thinks it might have been even the next week. Like we definitely did not do practice that Tuesday. I don't think we did it the next day, but I remember like a plane went overhead because everything was grounded for a while. And I remember a plane, and I believe it was a military plane, cargo, something. But like we were in the middle of running drills, and then like everybody just kind of stopped and like looked up and like watched the plane go across the sky, because it was like that was the first plane that we had seen in the sky since that Tuesday morning. But it was I had Miss Mulder. I had a big crush on Miss Mulder. Sophomore year, it was English class, and they made an announcement over the intercom, and then they brought in a TV. Or maybe we had one, but I remember the TV was on. It was second period, and she flipped on the news, and like we watched the second one happen live. So it's like we were just watching like the smoke. No one really knew what was going on. The second one hit. It was like, what the fuck is going on? And like nobody knew. Then they like made an announcement. They turned the TVs off, and the principal came on and made like this speech. Like somehow he knew like everything. Felt like within a half an hour we're still in that class. Our teacher, Miss Mulder, ran out of the class because she thought that her father was in Boston flying home. She knew the flight had taken off from Boston, so she was like sobbing, crying, thinking her dad was on that plane. Got in touch with her dad. The principal came on and was like talking about like the Kennedy. He's like, I remember where I was at Kennedy assassination. And I was like, what is going on here? Because it wasn't like we're under attack. It was just,
Yeah.
But he had seen something, and then like throughout the day, every single class was just, we're watching 9/11. So it was not a normal day at all. Whatever tests
Really?
or whatever, like
it was far from
you
normal
still
for
went
me.
to every period, and you just sat down and watched TV. And that's all anybody was doing. Then they said, hey, like just go home, no football, no whatever sport you were in, nothing, you just went home. And my dad was traveling too. He was in like Texas or something. He just rented a car and just drove home. So he drove like 18 hours straight home. And it was like, and I remember being like, we're gonna go to, by the end of the day, it was like, we're going to war. And I was like, 15 or 16. I think it was still 15, being like, I'm gonna have to be like, we're gonna have like World War III. Like I'm gonna be, like we're all going. It was like I remember being like very shaken, scared. So it was like I can't believe you guys just went on like that.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think of the correct way to word it, because I don't want it to be like insensitive, but it was almost like, you know how now we're like, unfortunately, a lot of terrible things happen in schools, and like there's like videos of like the kids are like under their desk. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, let the children be oblivious. And, let them like not know like what was going on. Whereas like we sat there and like, you're not, something's going on. Like you're smart enough to know something's going on, but like you're just like, oh, like they're just hiding it from us.
Yeah.
Like did I explain that best?
Yeah.
Kind of know what I'm getting at probably, but that's kind of what it was.
What are the 7th grade? It's like in that sweet spot where
See,
like,
it was a little different for me. I was telling you this like a week ago. In May of 2001, there's a picture of me on a Polaroid. It's a Polaroid picture, so it's not like on the internet or anything, of me in the observation deck of the World Trade Center with my grandma and 2 of my sisters. I don't think my brother was there. He might have been a little too young, but so I was in Mr. Williams' class, same last name. He was probably about 75 at the time. I don't know if he's still around. But he walked in and he said the World Trade Center just got hit by a plane. We think we're under attack. And I remember thinking, like, everybody was looking around. I remember looking around like, do you guys understand what's going on? Nobody knew the World Trade Center. Everybody knew it as the Twin Towers in my class. So no one had any fucking clue.
Yeah.
But I did, because I was just there like months earlier. And
You said that before. Like, what was it, like May? And
it was May of 2001. My dad's got the picture still. The only reason I never tweeted it before was because I have a Yankees hat on it. And that's like why.
You love P. Diddy and Mace. Who didn't?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I had. Jay-Z and
I had a red Yankees hat because of that.
But within 5 minutes of the teacher coming in and explaining what was going on, I got a call over our intercom saying, David Williams, please head to the principal's office. I'm like, fuck what I do this time. My mom was there with my siblings, and she pulled us out of school, and we were on the way home to my house, and my mom is crying hysterically. She can't get a hold of her parents. They only live like 45, 50 miles south of New York City on the Jersey Shore. Obviously, cell phones were very primitive at the time, and my dad was working in downtown Chicago that day. He was in the electrical union at the time. Couldn't get a hold of him. They thought Flight 93 was coming to attack the Sears Tower or something. It was a complete shit show. My mom specifically said, we're going to World War III right now. That's what she said. Yeah. That's what will stick out to me until the day I die. She said, as soon as we got into the car, we're going to World War III. I never thought of it like, oh, I'm going to get drafted like you may have.
I was like, I'm going. Like,
but
I was like, crazy. My future is set.
My next door neighbor's older brother, Tim Seco, I forget his older brother's name. I haven't spoken to Tim in 20 whatever years now, but he was out the door the next day. He enlisted.
Yeah.
And
I think there was like a moment where I was like looking at like the academies and stuff like that, because it was just like, like you had like
some sense of pride. Yeah.
And I can't remember.
I was talking to Chaps about that on his show the other day. After that, there was like an intense nationalistic pride, like with George going from George Bush throwing out the first pitch of the World Series game to like everybody. Like I remember being on the Jersey Shore for maybe the next summer it was, and you could play paintball games where you would fire a hopper of paintballs at a dude dressed in an Osama bin Laden or Saddam
There were
Hussein.
some wild things that were going on.
Yeah, the Islamophobia was fucking crazy.
Yeah, I feel like there were country songs about it. Like Toby Keith was singing songs, but like that same thing. But like that, everybody had that. There were flags everywhere.
Yeah,
and I can't remember.
We wanted to hunt down and kill everything in the Middle East.
Yeah,
like I'm not. It sounds awful saying that, but that's like as a whole, the country is kind of like that. Obviously, there were protests on the other side, but like as a whole,
no. Like, and that's one of those things too. Like when you go back and you look at like how the like everything now, it's like you can't get anything done. Like everybody's so like on either side of every issue. When you go back and look at like who voted to go to Iraq and who voted to pass the
Clintons.
Everybody.
Everybody.
It was like if there's 100 people in the Senate, it was like 99 to 1. Okay, so like everyone was like
all for it.
Fuck this, like well, let's go. And like there was no like what do you call that? Like the loyal opposition. It was just like everybody was just kind of on the same page, and then
the loyal opposition, like you were vilified.
Oh yeah, and like, do you remember? This is like another like conspiracy kind of thing. I feel like we talked about it on a show somewhat recently. Remember like the anthrax attacks? Like,
yeah.
Dude, when did we talk about that?
You could see a white powder in your school. It could have been flour in the fucking home ec room, and you're like, anthrax.
Yep.
It was a real thing. It was a real fear.
I never thought, I didn't go that far.
I mean, we were joking about it, but it was like, But
that was, I remember being like, I thought that there would just be like indiscriminate, like AK-47 shootings down like Michigan Avenue, schools, malls, things like that. And I thought that anthrax attacks would be like a big thing. But the reason I brought that up is because like the two senators who were like targeted in that were like the two senators who were like, well, let's pump the brakes on this Patriot Act thing. Like this is like, we gotta, like, I know this is like war times and everybody's going crazy and rightfully so, but we gotta hold on and see if we want to just green light spying on American citizens forever. And then they got the anthrax and they shut the fuck up. They passed that bill, and then they like years later you trace it back, like where did that weapons
probably
came from a U.S. military institution.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, so no, not probably.
Well,
there's only,
I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, so there, it's like that's where they found it. That's what, like, because there was only one there. I can't remember exactly how they like linked it there, but there was only being manufactured in like one place, and they were like indicators where it was like, oh yeah, like this definitely came from this place. So it was like everything was so fucking scary. And yeah, the anthrax, like I really thought that was going to be, and the country went crazy. The world went crazy.
I do remember my dad did sit me down. It was like a real conversation. He's like, hey, I don't know if you're going to get drafted, but your cousins probably will be.
Really?
Yeah, like one of those. Like he didn't know, but like he was just like, it's possible that they might get,
Totally.
Because it's shipped off to war. Yeah.
And like I'm going to get drafted. Like there's a possibility. Like,
and it was like the fog of war. Like your dad's like justifiably.
No, that wasn't a
so.
crazy take at all. That wasn't crazy at all.
Because it definitely.
And I don't
was.
think he was saying that to like scare me. It was like very much a real like, hey.
He was sitting you down and being like, hey, like, I mean, he probably. How old's your dad?
He is 65 now.
Okay, so he didn't experience that with Nam personally, but does he have like older siblings?
No, like my dad's 68 or 69. He was like I got to go to college, so I don't have to go to Vietnam. And I think they might have because that was like an out. By the time my dad was 18, like if you were going to college, they didn't send you. Which, looking back, which my dad grew up very poor too, but like that's a thing that is like targeted at poor people. Like, oh, you're smart and wealthy enough to go to college. Well, then you don't have to go fight and die in this war. But if you're some fucking poor kid, you're going like that's crazy that they made that distinction in Vietnam, where it's like, oh, if you have any sort of like quote unquote real future, you don't have to go to war. That is preposterous. But that is like you're saying, like and it ended up being a 20-year war. So if things had gone differently policy-wise, it's not inconceivable that we all could have been over there. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is, man. It is. And it's crazy how much time has gone by. It's crazy the more and more people that, you get to know that there's people in this office that just don't remember it.
Yeah, my brother doesn't.
Well, no.
Not well. Yeah.
Yes.
That's like my barometer for if you're young or not, is if you remember 9/11.
Yeah, Mickey Smokes is 24.
Oh, he has
not a clue.
Yeah, and my brother too. Like he was 4 or 5, when that happened. So that is a thing, and it is weird because I really do think that it still really informs and covers like my worldview a lot. Like it's like people are like, you're conspiracy theorists, you're this, you're that. Well, it's like, I don't know how, if you lived through 9/11, the build up to the Iraq war with WMD, the financial crisis, and then COVID, which there's questions and like sometimes just fucking outright lies, like the WMD in Iraq that they sold to the American people, that it's like, well, why would I fucking believe anything anybody says? Which is why I never I just don't believe it. I just don't in general believe it. And then it's like, as more and more things come out about like the 9/11 commission and who knew what and what the plans were, like should I play that clip? Have you heard this? You know who Wesley Clark is? Do you remember that name?
Why do I remember that name?
So Wesley Clark was a 4-star general, and he, in like the 90s, I think he was in Desert Storm and stuff like that, and then he ran for president. Like he was on the debate stage as a Democrat. It might have been like the 2004 John Kerry.
Okay.
It might have been, or maybe 2008 against Obama, but like in our lifetimes, like in our life, like I think we can just Google that. But then he has this clip where he's talking about like what's going on in the Pentagon. He was 2004. Okay, so I sent this to Ed, and I'll just play it into the microphone this morning, because it's like wild the way that
9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. I said, well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda? He said, no. He says, there's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. About 10 days after 9/11.
So, like, isn't that? Had you ever heard that before?
No, I had never heard that.
So
I've never heard that.
I mean, that's that's not some crackpot. That's Wesley Clark, 4-star general, and a guy who was a viable candidate for the president of the United States in 2004. So, and that's what it's like, the fog of war, and you see like Colin Powell get up in front of the UN and be like, they're making this shit, a little vial of anthrax. And it's like, so we better go get Iraq. Because what was like the Condoleezza Rice? She said, we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. And it was like, that's fucking good logic. Like, we haven't found anything. There's no evidence, but we don't want the first bit of evidence to be a dirty bomb going off in New York City or Chicago or anywhere else. So like, we better go get them before they get us. But then you hear like Wesley Clark, and it was just like, you know what? Like, let's just fucking turn the Middle East over. And they did Iraq, they did Afghanistan, they eventually did Libya. Syria has been in civil war for forever. Like, they did a lot of those, and you wonder if things had gone, quote unquote, better in Iraq if they would have just kept on mowing people down. But Iraq turned into such a shit show quagmire.
It was
yeah. And then Afghanistan was longer somehow. Like, they had to do Iraq twice because they like pulled out in a haste. That was like Obama's thing. We're gonna do the good war, which was Afghanistan. Somehow Afghanistan was the good war, and Iraq was like, we never should have done that, and like I voted against it, so we're gonna try to pull out of there. They pull out of there. Man, who fucking knows? But then it's like, well, then ISIS pops up, and it's like we find out, well, how did ISIS start? Well, we were funding some of their factions to go fight in Syria, and then they got out of control and spilled over. And it's just like all the things that so then we had to go back into Iraq and fight ISIS. And it's just like, this is fucking insanity. And it all started with this thing in 9/11. And that was, I remember being a kid being like, they got 19 guys are Saudis, but we're going to war.
Right. No, I remember thinking that too. Like, obviously with social media and the internet, information is widely available now that wasn't back in 2001. But I remember specifically thinking to myself exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, what does Iraq have to do with it if everybody says they're from Afghanistan and Saudi Arabia and Kurdistan maybe, which isn't even fucking a country, but like, why were we there? Why were they
in Iraq?
Yeah.
Well, there was like a WMD program, and it's just like I think that
they scoured every single fucking inch of that country looking
nothing.
Nah.
And they just tore that whole place apart. Not that Saddam and his sons were good people, but it's like
they were pretty bad people.
They were awful people,
horrible people. Yeah.
Yeah. But then there's like that other clip, like, but he was our guy in the 80s.
He was,
because he was fighting Iran. And there's that clip of Donald Rumsfeld where he in the 80s, because Rumsfeld had some cabinet position for Reagan. So he was over there and meeting Saddam, and
he was over there like 4 times in a 3-year period.
Yeah. And he was like, he was singing Saddam's praises. Like he's, because Iran was like the theocracy, right? We're like, the extremists,
Islam versus Christianity,
right?
Blah, blah, blah,
and they're like, this guy's a secular guy, like he
women's rights,
He was more progressive.
Mm-hmm.
He was this. He was more our kind of guy. Is basically, and then he does like the Gulf War, and then there's like evidence that was like, where Saddam basically maybe thought that we'd look the other way on the Gulf War, because they were like, I don't know. And then he was like, oh shit, like now it's like we're in trouble. And there's people who are like, after the Cold War, the military got like, like, well, what do we do now? Like there's no more big boogeyman. So they better dream one up, and that's like the speculation. Who knows? But it's been, I don't know. That's where people are like, well, why don't you believe anything? It's because of these like seminal things where it's like they lied to us.
Yeah, which is interesting because starting before the podcast, you were saying it made you more nationalistic, and that's where you guys were like, oh, you weren't butting heads, but,
yeah,
and you would. Like,
depends
there's
on
a
how
lot
you
he
define
agrees
it. I
with.
love America.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
that you
No,
probably agree
it's
with
just
him
like
too.
9/11's like so I went on zero blog. I was gonna say zero blog 30 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and Chaps asked me a question from my perspective why he thinks or why I think that numbers are so down in the military, and I didn't know he was asking that question. I didn't have a computer of me in front of me or anything, and I'm like, well, honestly, it's like I remember growing up, especially after 2011, it was like America, rah rah, like we're better than you, we're the best country on earth. Now it's like somewhere along that not to say anything changed for me personally, but somewhere along the lines that flipped to like America like has all these issues, like there's not a lot of pride in being an American right now. But I think on one day and one day only, take away everything that Chief just said, like 3,000 people died in that attack.
Yeah.
And that was a direct attack on our democracy and our freedoms and our country. And I think for one day and one day only, you wake up and you're like, we got things going pretty well here. You know?
I think, yeah, there's two sides to the same coin where it's like we need to have we need to have more gratitude for being born on this patch of earth and act accordingly.
Which is why the people, I forget which year it was a couple of years ago, but I remember there was a big thing on Twitter where people, like the people that hate America, were like shitting on people who cared about 9/11. Do you remember that?
I don't. That's fucking crazy.
It was nuts. It was like,
that's fucked
nuts.
up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
Like you read Large's blog. I don't care who you vote for, or what country you're from. If you fucking hate the West or if you don't,
That's a human being.
that's a human being.
Yeah. And that's like St. Anne's, that's her father, you know? Like that's like, it is, no matter how you slice it, it is a tragedy anytime that many people die, you know, innocent people die all at once, you know? And it's like, and it is something that is scarred and burned. Like those images are never going to leave anybody's brain. Even like, I'm sure Nicky Smokes, who's, you know, a kid, I'm sure he like has, like he knows all the images of it, but it was just a weird thing to be like conscious of it or aware of it while it was going on. Yeah. But it is, I don't know, you know, and it's just like all the little things, like, you know, you travel through the airport now, like our security line in Chicago and Denver was like fucking forever. If you watch movies from the mid and early 90s, you just walk right up to the gate.
I swear to God, it was Christmas 2000. My dad has been on a plane one time, ever. We had Christmas with my grandparents in New Jersey, and I don't know why, but my dad had to fly there. Otherwise, he was going to miss Christmas, and he's like, I'm missing Christmas because he doesn't fly. And
Is he afraid?
He terrified of
Okay.
getting on a plane.
Maybe that's where you
terrified
get your
of
heights
getting on.
from.
Oh, it's every male in my family. I've said that.
Okay.
Aside from me and my brother. My brother, he's probably better than I am, but my dad's
You're fine flying though.
flying I can do, but like nobody on my dad's side, all the men don't fly. Anyways, it was Christmas 2000, and we met my dad at the gate, and he had my dad doesn't drink hard shit. He doesn't make a mixer or a cocktail or anything. He had a fucking empty bottle of Jack Daniels on him.
Whew.
Yeah. And he brought it on the plane with him, and he just fucking slammed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Now,
You can't do that anymore.
see, that I don't remember at all.
Okay.
I don't remember flying.
I have like, I don't know how many times I flew pre 9/11.
What was it like?
You
trying to
walked into the
remember.
airport, and there was like
Yeah.
metal detectors and shit, but
But it was, you know,
you just went to the gate.
yeah.
Like you picked your family up at the gate with like, you know, if you were a limo driver, they had all the signs out there.
So I used
So
to.
they let people who didn't have a ticket through there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
so,
yes,
like,
yes.
and that's probably
I knew that.
I remember that better actually because I did fly at least a couple of times before 9/11, but my cousin Michael, he would always come stay with us for like 2 weeks in the summer, maybe even longer, and we would pick him up at the airport, but he would be like a 7-year-old kid. Like he's a month younger than me. So I remember like every summer we'd go and like, because he was a minor, you know, like you don't let the minor just walk through an airport. So we would meet him at the gate, and like the flight attendant would like help him off the plane, and then we would meet him at the gate. But we didn't go through any security or you just go right there. Now it's like they got to. Because remember like the shoe bomber guy too, like that's why you do you remember that guy? Was that Ramsey Youssef? I can't remember that guy's name, but there was like, do you remember the shoe bomber?
He got through. I forget his name, but his shoe started smoking.
He had hid like plastic explosives in the soles of his shoes, so that's why they started making you take off your shoes and putting those through the X-ray machine too, because it was like he found
the crack
in the system.
What's interesting, was it ever disclosed what happened with the liquids thing?
I think that like why it has to be a 4-ounce thing.
Yeah, because I remember that. I remember when that changed. Remember that was a whole big thing, and people were just leaving fucking big ass bottles of shampoo like behind
shampoo,
the remember that, like,
lotion.
It would just be a plethora of items just left
Yep.
behind that people are like up in arms about. Now, obviously, we've got
I don't know. Like, you think
acclimated
they made a stop? Is that what you're saying?
They made a stop,
Yeah.
but I don't recall why.
The
I know
specific incident.
What did they?
Wasn't there a diaper guy too? Wasn't there a guy?
Maybe.
Yeah, I feel like they had like a couple of like
someone's definitely covered what was brewing to make them stop. Like, nothing went through like the shoe bomber or a smoking shoe, but they
shoe bomber
definitely
got,
caught
like,
wind.
tackled.
Yeah, they definitely caught wind of something about to do something with aerosol.
Yeah.
or liquids
or anything over, and maybe they just determined that like it doesn't matter what it is below 4 ounces, but could have been like, all right, this is below 4 ounces. We know that this type of explosive has to be 6 ounces or more. You know, like I'm making that up, but like that makes sense to me.
Yeah, but in my head, like there had to be a big tip off about like
probably it could be
someone building something with liquid.
Yeah. It is. I saw this clip the other day too. Going back, it was like, you know, we did catch Bin Laden eventually. There's all sorts of. This is what I mean. Like, as these families are suing for information, now there's been like disclosure that like Pakistan. Remember, there was like, we couldn't tell them. It was, you know, the Zero Dark 30 movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't tip them off. Now there's like Musharraf and like their heart, who was the president at the time, and they have called the ISI, which is their version of the CIA in Pakistan, that they like knew where he was for a year. Like there's plenty of evidence.
I remember watching that Sunday Night Baseball game.
It was like May 11th or something like that.
When
May 12th.
Obama was reported as shot dead, and
Osama.
What did I say?
Obama.
Did I?
Yep.
Osama bin Laden was shot dead. That was not a Freudian slip.
Yes,
I lost my train of thought.
Any slip.
You're watching Sunday Night
slip
Baseball.
in this room is Freudian.
Yeah. Officially?
No, but not really.
Anyways, you're watching Sunday Night Baseball. Osama was shot.
And I remember thinking, like, Pakistan's got a lot of fucking questions to answer right now. And it doesn't seem like they kind of ever were.
Well, the narrative was that they like traced his couriers, but the whole Zero Block 30. And
Dark.
Yes, Zero Dark 30, sorry. And they traced his couriers, and they like let him back, and it was like all the spy craft and this and that. And, you know, they couldn't let Pakistan know where he was or that they were coming, because they might tip him off and move him, because reasonable suspicion. He's like a mile down the road from their version of West Point.
Right.
So
how do you not know that?
Now what there's speculation on, and there's documents, people can Google this, where it's like you had high-ranking people that are saying, like, we knew who he was. We were waiting for the U.S. to cut a deal. Like, cut us a deal. Like, we'll turn him right over to you. But they didn't end up doing that. But they supposedly, like, the reason like the helicopters got there without any problems or anything is Pakistan knew. It's like, hey, like, we're coming to your airspace. So now it's like the narrative is flipped. And it's like, I don't know what the truth is, but there are people saying that now, that Pakistan knew where he was, and they knew the United States was coming, and it was just like this was all part of this, you know, the grant, you know, this, I don't know, they wanted the Navy SEALs to go in there and do it, you know, like they wanted that, as opposed to like here Pakistan has them, turn them over in handcuffs.
I kind of I like that too, though.
I'd rather just get them. I'd rather have, you know, like,
all is well that ends well. It ended well.
Yeah. Trial would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have made it to trial? That would have been...
Me? No, I don't think he would have made it to trial.
How would you like to be the guy in charge of protecting or even defending in court Osama bin Laden?
That's for a lot of people, though. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
about any person who's done something vile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's more people than Osama.
Totally.
And I wonder about that question with. But it's a good question.
It is
I
a
mean,
good
you
question.
have one of them on the show.
Yeah.
John Wayne Gacy's guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I
But that's-
respected the fuck out of his answer, too.
Yeah. But what did he say? Because that's, to me, like that's one of those things that makes America great.
It's
And that's
awesome,
something that
but
we
it's
should-
like,
yeah, but
when's there... I mean...
you should, I know, but that's
Yeah,
like the,
yeah.
like whatever, the idea of a, more perfect union and more is like,
That, for
we
sure.
have to be, you and I want to just fucking murder them. But we should be subservient to like a higher ideal.
Yeah.
So like the
I agree.
collective has to be like the
Fuck
right
that
thing
guy.
to do. Yeah. Everybody wants to string him up by his neck, right? I remember being like, we should just let Roger Clemens throw fastballs at him. Like that,
Yeah.
that was like a legitimate thought that I had. Like, what should we do? Just have like, that would be the most American thing ever. Just have our big arm pitchers from Texas go down there and throw fastballs at these guys' ribs. And that was, 16-year-old me thinking that. It's a little different now, but that is like we should have a higher ideal so that individuals like you and I or most of the country don't want to just do something rash.
I mean, and that's what would have happened, I'm sure. However,
Yeah.
I would have
But you're
liked
right.
to be in the same room with them
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
a handgun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that, can't have that.
Crazy shit, man. It's just
Crazy.
like, and it's not even that. Like, I felt like Europe got like a ton of, like that, like their attacks, and it's just like.
Oh, that's
scary,
why
dude.
Spain, we had like that, we had more of a NATO coalition for Afghanistan.
Then, yeah. It was just us, Britain, and Australia?
It was more than that, but like those are the big ones. But everybody was in.
Yeah.
Because I think it did. It was the Article 5 of
Explain that like I'm fucking 5 because I am.
If
Article
a NATO
yeah.
countries
Yes,
attacked
then
all of NATO
everyone goes. You
responds.
said there was
Yeah.
more. There was more of a response.
No.
what you said?
So in Iraq, Dave was saying in Iraq who came with us. Like we had a coalition, but it was like, all right, like
It wasn't the whole world. It was
Oh, okay,
us,
so
Britain,
that's- so
and Australia,
Afghanistan-
amongst a few others.
Afghanistan is the only time of the NATO alliance where it's, it has like its own constitution. It was the only time, and it's been in existence, I think, since 49, 48, something like that. Cold War, where it was the only time that Article 5 was exercised. Being like, hey, because it was, if you're attacked, we're all attacked. So we were all attacked, okay? Then they had, it was a train in Spain, right? Where they killed 200 people, the suicide bomber that you were talking.
I don't
They-
exa-
you-
there,
well,
was,
you
there, was one,
referenced-
there was one in Nice, France. I remember.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's a nice place though.
It is a nice
And they
place.
had one in London, but Spain was like, whoever it was, Al Qaeda, whoever claimed that, hey, like we're doing this because you're supporting this war. Spain just was like, all right, we're out, and they pulled all their like active military troops out at that point because they're like, well, we don't want anything to do with this. And then London had the bus bombings, I think in 06.
They had a bunch of them,
07. But it was, like Europe went through it too. France got it. I don't know about Nice, but it was not like, it was more ISIS. Remember they had like 2014. I feel like they had all the shootings and bombings in Paris.
Yeah,
like that was fucking wild.
Bus thing was that something?
That was
remembering
London.
right? Yeah.
London had a bus. There's probably more than one bus.
Yeah, on the evening of July 14, 2016, a 19-ton cargo truck deliberately was driven into crowds.
Oh, that too.
Yeah,
that was
86 people died.
yeah.
And 434 other were injured.
That was the thing when going full circle back to when I was a kid, being like, that type of attack, if you just have a random person with a gun or driving a truck into crowds or whatever, that is impossible to stop. I was thinking that would just be a thing every day.
That's what I mean. Like that was
Yeah.
one of those things where, like you change the way you live. Obviously, that's like the biggest
Yeah.
moment in American history. But I remember going through, just shit that was happening in Europe and everything.
Yeah.
That was scared the fuck out of me too.
Well, because I think France was playing Germany in some kind of soccer friendly, and they like bombed the stadium. They like bombed outside this. Like you could, and then like you're watching the broadcast, and you hear this boom like outside the stadium, and that was like a coordinated thing where they hit up restaurants, they hit the stadium, they hit like 3-5 different places across Paris that one night, and it was it was all ISIS related. Yeah. And then they had the Charlie Hebdo thing. Remember that? That was fucking scary too.
I do, yeah.
So do you remember that Charlie Hebdo?
I don't
Charlie
think so.
Hebdo was like a satirical
cartoonist.
Satirical cartoon magazine, and they had an
Was
image
it Mohammed?
of
Yes, now I remember.
And they
went
and like murdered everybody on staff.
Yeah.
And it was like holy fuck. But it was like the whole, like it wasn't a quote unquote world war, like total war the way that World War II was, but like it felt like there were axes that, like the West first, the Middle East, and I'm sure they felt like it too. And it's like, I told you to listen to that podcast.
I'm in the middle of it right now.
So did you get to the part in the 90s where who was the Secretary of State back then? It was a woman. She was foreign born.
I know. What's her fucking... Hold on.
It was not Janet Reno. It was somebody else. But anyway, so she was doing this press conference, and they were talking. Someone asked her about the sanctions against Iraq in the 90s. And they were like...
Madeleine Albright.
Madeleine Albright, thank
Madeleine
you.
Albright.
Yeah. And Madeleine Albright, someone was like, well, there's speculation that, people in Iraq are saying, not even speculation, but there are reports in Iraq saying that these sanctions have caused the deaths of like 500,000 Iraqi children, because they're like, hey, you can't get food in, you can't,
And what did they
her
say?
response was,
This is Hillary Clinton, correct?
no, this is Madeleine
no.
Albright.
Okay, now I remember.
So
Yes.
Secretary of State under Clinton. She like corrects him. So it's not. No, like we don't agree with that estimate. 500. It's more like 250,000. Like 250,000 dead children because of sanctions, and it's like she's like, yeah, that's a number we're comfortable with. So it could have been more, but the Secretary of State was like, we're comfortable with a policy that has led to the death and starvation of 250,000 children. That is fucking, and it was just like, on to the next day. Like it's like we're, and rightfully like 3,000, people in 9/11, but it's like we had policies that were like, you had the number one, person about foreign affairs in the country, Madeleine Albright, Secretary of State, being like, yeah, we're comfortable with a policy that killed 250,000 kids. That's fucking crazy that's not talked about more. And this has been like, I'm reading that book, The Fourth Turning, we did that, what was the name of that, the first book? The Cycles. Remember, like we talked about the
Strauss-Howe?
Strauss-Howe.
Yeah.
So Strauss died in 2007, I think. So Howe wrote about the crisis that we're in now, saying it goes to 2035, based on like his timelines. And it's like, there's so many things that like he predicted and got right, and it was just like this is like a storm that's brewing, and like we are still like in this crisis period. And he argues that it started when the market crashed in 2008. It feels like we've been pushing towards this like since the early 90s, where it's just like we're like since really the end of the Cold War, where it's just like we've been motoring through like everything is just fucking in decay and violence everywhere, and it's just I don't know, it's a scary time. It's a scary time to be alive.
It is.
Yeah.
And it also like, I don't want to say this and sound ignorant, but it does kind of feel like it's been kind of quiet.
On which front?
I was just thinking about that weirdly.
On which front?
Just like something like seriously fucking like scary like
I
that,
mean,
like we just talked about.
It's only been 2 years since we got 13 soldiers died.
100%. And that's why I said I don't want to sound like,
yeah.
what do you? That's not enough, bro. Like, you know what I mean? There's
No, totally.
tons of bad stuff that happens.
Yeah, but I'm not looking around the airport doing ocular pat downs of people as I'm going through, like looking for threats the way I was getting on public transit 20 years ago.
I was gonna say that the very first time I flew back from the East Coast, it was for football, and I was flying alone, and there were Arabic people on my flight, and I was like 12, 13 years old, ready fucking to go. because that was the distinction you drew.
Yeah.
And it's sad that that's the truth.
Well,
but
and there was like the flight, was it 93, right, in Pennsylvania? Where
one of those guys went to Wheaton College, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And there was just like,
You didn't know where that plane was going.
But you
at
just,
the time.
everybody just felt like on guard.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was tense. Everything was bad.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible state of affairs these days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely was, Dave. I was like you.
I say that,
Yeah.
yes, embarrassed, but like I say that because I know that wasn't just me. That was the sentiment. That was the national narrative that we had.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. It's
And,
terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, and of course, domestically, like we do have our issues, and
We got a zillion of
there
them.
plenty of them.
especially when it comes to like scary things that can happen on just your average day of going somewhere. So I don't know.
That. Yeah, like that. And I guess that's to your other point where it's like there hasn't been like a major national terrorist attack, but you could call all these things domestic terrorists. Like we got so many fucking problems. That's what I mean. Like
So
it feels
fucked
like
up.
everything is like in decay.
Yeah. All right then, man. That's it. Thanks for joining, Dave.
Always a pleasure to talk geopolitical.
Our foreign correspondent.
Yeah. Do you want to know what's going on in Ukraine right now?
Dave and Alan Williams.
It's World War I there now.
I'm
It's
depressed
just trench
now.
warfare.
I got another little fact
Fucking
for you.
moving inch this way, inch that way. It's bad.
Do you want to hear another little fact?
Sure. Love facts.
2017, you can look this up. 2017, we were supplying the Afghan military with helicopters.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up, so the Pentagon or whoever, Defense Department, was buying the helicopters, obviously, right? And they ended up buying a fleet of helicopters, Russian helicopters. And there was like a, angst or anger, and the people were bitching about it in Congress, being like, why the fuck are we, spending all this money and just giving it to the Russians? Like, well, we buy our own Bell helicopter, whoever's making helicopters for us now. Let's use American ones. And they were like, no, look, like, they've been flying Russian-built helicopters in Afghanistan for 30 fucking years now. We have pilots that know how to fly these ones. They know how to fly them. We'll buy them. We'll give them those. And they stood their ground. They didn't, like, cave to, like, the political pressure, like, hey, buy American, ship American. Like, they'll be able to, these Afghans will be able to use the Russian ones better. So they buy the Russian ones. Since then, do you know where that same fleet of helicopters are? They're being flown by Ukrainians in Ukraine again. So it's like a
Full circle.
Yeah. So now it's like we originally like were funding people, buying things to shoot down these helicopters in the 80s.
Now we're giving them
that. Then we bought them and gave them to the people that that we've been fighting theoretically, fighting
For
with,
8
against, who
years.
fucking knows. Then they turn around and now they sell them to Ukrainians in another proxy war. And it's just
1984.
It's
Eurasia versus East Asia one day.
It's crazy.
What are all the countries in that book?
No.
All right then. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. Kind of a depressing episode today, but
Good talk though.
yeah,
Necessary episode.
good conversation. See you guys tomorrow.